once again we caution you. These stories are definitely not for the timid soul. So we tell you calmly and very sincerely, if you frighten easily, turn off your radio now.
Between the time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of. And unto this, Conan, destined to bear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a troubled brow. It is I, his chronicler, who alone can tell thee of his saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
This is the Bonus Material Podcast. I'm Tom Carnell.
I'm Sean Smithson.
And I'm Langley J. West.
And tonight we're talking about heroes. Everybody has them, everybody needs them, but what are they, and how are they represented in cinema? Anyone want to start with an idea or an opinion?
Of what a hero is?
Of what a hero is.
Of what a hero is. I think hero is one of those terms that gets tossed around way too much.
Agreed.
I'm guilty of it. When I meet somebody that I admire and I like their work, I tend to say, I met one of my heroes today.
Right.
That's not really what a hero is. That's a role model. I think a hero is somebody who lays it all on the line for the betterment of someone else.
And not a B movie actor who's charging $80 for an autograph behind the table at a convention.
I didn't say that.
Which is usually the agent's fault, to be clear. But
but yeah, it's someone that we see and we strive to emulate. Is that fair?
Sure.
Sure. I mean, didn't we when we were reading comics as kids and even as adults? You know. I know for a fact that things like Batman and Conan and those examples of what it is to be a hero affected me in my real life, absolutely.
I'll say that as a kid growing up without a dad, absolutely.
Right.
When I growing up, Batman in many ways became like a dad, or at least a model for my behavior.
Absolutely.
And without that, who knows?
Well, I think in the absence of
nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're going to find a hero.
Mm-hmm.
That's why so often people kind of go astray, because they grab the
wrong hero.
Yeah, they grab the convenient hero, the hero that happens to be there at the time, and it turns out that maybe that hero's a villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this: who is your favorite hero, or who was your first hero, rather?
Wow.
I can tell you mine.
Okay.
It's a cross between Charlton Heston's portrayal of Neville in the Omega Man, because of when I saw it at about 4 years old, and Sinbad from The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
I remember a TV show called Time Tunnel.
Right.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Growing up, that was the shit. I got in trouble once for pretending to be spinning down the time tunnel, and a yard duty teacher was all mad. Anyway, so
what were you doing?
We were pretending that we were the guys in the time tunnel.
But
it was a great show. It was a great
about that.
What's that?
Why the fuck would a yard duty get mad about
that? We were. Never mind. We were spinning around and
jumping up and spinning around and waving your arms.
Yeah. So
completely inappropriate behavior.
Kids are on drugs.
But that was the first one for me, because I remembered it sounded really cool to be lost in a tunnel of time. So yeah.
For me, it echoing Sean's, would probably be Sinbad from the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
I'd imagine that stems from both of us. Also, our first idols probably being Ray Harryhausen. Differentiating between idol and hero.
Well, there's a bit of an age, kind of an age difference. We're spaced far enough apart.
Also, too, like a lot of people, they go with the pat answer of, my father or my mother or my
that
aunt
wasn't
it.
Me either.
Well, I think that's insincere. I think that comes later. I don't think any kid, if you ask them, will say that at a really young age. They're going to go to, the more, the things that they see on TV or television or the things that they read. And it isn't until later that they go, well, my old man,
Right. It's not till you're in your 20s or 30s that you appreciate your father.
Right.
If sometimes.
Yeah, it depends.
There are those.
If you had one, unlike me and Tom.
But culturally, we need them. We need them to show, in some ways, what happens when people go up against the system. It's the legend. It's the story. It's the myth that is told of people that is designed to either inspire or keep them in check. Cautionary tales.
Sure.
That.
There's one thing that's been crossing my mind because of doing all the convention work, and I do a lot of stuff with the Salt Lake City Comic Con and the Salt Lake City FanX, and it's mostly superhero oriented. There's not a lot of horror going on at the event, but they did this press conference at the last one, and the mayor spoke, and he gave them like a certificate for the city and said, we can all be heroes. And I've been thinking...
in our own way.
Sure, yeah, right. But seriously, I've been thinking that I'd like to see more of that introduced into that culture. There's panels on everything, maybe a panel on altruism and really kind of living up to, if you're going to dress up like Batman or you're going to dress up like Spider-Man, as we were talking about it carrying over into your real life, I think there's a great opportunity these days with superheroes just being the biggest thing ever, bigger than they've ever been in our Western culture in particular, to kind of steer people towards maybe being a little more altruistic, maybe giving back a little bit, and it not just being lip service, which is kind of what I felt I was getting at the press conference from the mayor. Not to kick myself in the face or not be appreciative of that, but I would like to see a tangible change in people, and I think it's really possible. Actually,
well, I think once we stop looking at these stories as commodities and we start looking at them as opportunities to change, as you always hear people talk about, well, this changed my life. Well, let's use these as an opportunity to change our lives
and other people's.
Big one robot beating up another robot for domination of an apathetic planet. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, or the question of who's which superhero is stronger, Hulk or Wolverine or.
Well, yeah. Since you brought up superheroes, let's talk about them.
Okay.
They're bigger than life. They do the things we all want to do. People like things like Superman, Batman. All the comic heroes that are so. I think it's interesting that in this day and age we're turning to bigger and bigger superheroes.
So going back to trying to make real change, especially when we're talking about superheroes. I find it really interesting, this kind of rash of quote-unquote real superheroes that across the country. People who dress up in a costume.
Don't get me started on these guys.
And as silly as they might be, they are trying to do something. They're ineffective, and they're coming from a really weird place. But I think it's that spirit that a superhero inspires in us, and we go on to hopefully do something with that.
Well, I think that I really have a big problem with a lot of the Phoenix Joneses of the world,
Sure.
and because I think they're not trained and they're out there harassing people in many instances, and they're getting in the way of real law enforcement.
Sure.
And it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, as I know you know. So, I think that if the guy wants to really help, I think he should join the police academy and become a cop. And,
sure.
Absolutely. Let's contextualize Phoenix Jones, Tom.
He's one of those superhero guys that runs around, and he's had a lot of problems with overstepping bounds, let's say.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a whole other show.
He's fucking annoying. Well, but let me interject this about Phoenix Jones in particular. I don't think he's a hero, and I don't think he's that altruistic because he's incredibly egotistical about why he goes about the stuff he does.
I don't really care that why he does or why he doesn't. I just feel like, dude, I get it. You want to help, but you're in the way. You know what I mean? So, anyway.
Well, you're talking about, law enforcement. I think a lot of people feel that call to help in some way, and they wind up going into law enforcement or the military. I think it's a very, very small number of people who go into those things to be assholes. Kind of like politics. I think people do try to help for a certain reason, and that people also try to help wearing a cowl. Sure.
For another reason.
Sure.
So, but it's just a matter of due process. It's a matter of some guy in a wacky suit out there, walking up to me in the middle of the night and asking to see my ID. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway.
Enough press for Phoenix Jones.
I know.
Dude, if you're listening, you're a douche.
So moving on, what about the polar opposite of that? We made a sort of list in preparation of this to the listener. But what about everyday heroes? People we meet on the street, the man who runs the shop down the street that has done it for 70 years. Is he a hero?
In a way. I think there's levels of heroism. I mean, just staying the course sometimes in this world and in today's society, that's kind of heroic in and of itself.
Well, what's interesting, you hear, and this is not a show I don't want to go anywhere near, but you hear the phrase 9/11 heroes a lot.
Sure.
And that's in many times someone who was there, just there. Did they do something heroic other than be there? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, they died, and don't send letters about that, people. But the idea that the label of hero is attached.
Sure. I think again, the word hero is overused. I mean, and I'm sure there were people in the middle of that tragedy who did heroic things.
Absolutely.
Who grabbed the person and pulled them to safety, so on and so forth. But to say somebody's a hero just because they died because they happen to be in a particular, I think that's silly.
Yes.
That's
and I think it diminishes those that did do heroic.
Sure.
Well, that kind of goes back to, I mean, when we've talked about the zombie apocalypse, and it's my theory that humans are innately good, at their core.
I disagree.
Or, well, you know what? Maybe that's because it's the imperative to survive. But I think that, say you have a gang of thugs, the zombie apocalypse hits, they're going to be more apt to save the baby, But
you'd be surprised at the people who would save the baby, though. To be fair,
that's kind of what I'm saying. What I'm saying. It's like a person who's not pure of heart can do something heroic.
Sure,
I'll put it that way.
Just having been there in the moment.
Yeah. And there's a very thin line there. I mean,
as an example, it calls to mind the picture of like the baseball flying into or the bat flying into the stands. The assorted reactions. You know what I mean? Some people pull away. Some people are trying to reach out to block it.
And getting back to superheroes, I mean, they are incredibly popular right now, but they've always been around. I mean, we have Gilgamesh as a hero.
The first hero.
Yeah, we have Beowulf.
You know what? I'm not really familiar with Gilgamesh. Can you nutshell Gilgamesh for me?
Gilgamesh, it's I believe it's a Mesopotamian.
I want to say we'll go with that.
Yeah. Story, in which he basically follows. I mean, if you take Joseph Campbell's Monomyth, the hero's journey and lay it alongside of it, it pretty much hits all those notes. He goes, he finds a sidekick who helps him. He confronts these great evils. He fights these big monsters. It's a superhero story from right off the bat.
Should we go over the Monomyth real quick?
Sure.
Real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So it begins. This is by Joseph Campbell, but it begins with something with our main character in a set of stasis where he's at home and he has a good life, but maybe there's wanderlust or whatever. Then suddenly there's a call to adventure. And that's the message from out of town, the letter in the mail, the thing that makes the hero go off on his journey.
Right.
Gandalf showing up at Bilbo's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's the addition of what may or may not be what would be considered supernatural aid. Maybe he gets a ring, or he gets a magic sword, or a flying horse, or
something that helps him. That's going to help him.
It gives him an edge.
Yeah.
And in some ways convinces him that this is a good idea in the first place. You know what I mean? Before from jump, like, here, I want you to go on this crazy adventure. No, that's going to get me killed. Well, I'll give you this sword that cuts through metal.
Right.
Now we're talking.
Right. And sometimes that supernatural help is a placebo.
Yes.
So I think oftentimes it's like, but I don't have the such and such anymore. You didn't need it. It's been inside you all along.
Right. It is that. It's the heart, the brain, it's the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And then we have our hero hitting his first real problem. They call it the Threshold Guardian. It's the guardian of the threshold, and it's the passage between the world of the known and the world of the unknown.
He's gotten on that ship, and he is now in uncharted waters.
Right. He doesn't know what's going to happen now. He's left the Shire. He's whatever. In some ways met the vampire that brings him into that world. You know what I mean? So it's somewhere where he's off into the Toolies. At that point, he meets maybe a helper, maybe a sidekick, and then they at some point meet the mentor. And then the mentor runs them through a series of challenges and temptations, whether it's push-ups or it's wax on, wax off.
Right.
Anybody? Then maybe they may find another helper, and at that point they get to the abyss, where there's death and rebirth, and ultimately a revelation where they learn something. And not only is the old them, the weak them, burnt away, and now the true hero, who is still unsure of his new abilities, is going forward. That's the transformation. They're going forward, having been changed. And then there's something called atonement, where it's usually a loss of some kind. Mm-hmm. Usually, maybe it's the sidekick that takes a stray bullet. It's the girlfriend. It's you fill in the blanks. And then there's a gift of the goddess where he's rewarded that even though you've lost something, you're still a better person for it, and you're still a richer person for it, and you're now the one. You're the change, the enlightened one. And then there's the return home to where you go back to that world of stasis, having wiped out the big enemy, transformed the world, saved the planet.
Right. Joseph Campbell referred to that stage as the status quo, which really tripped me out, the return to status quo.
Agreed.
Rather than becoming like a god or a king, he returns to status quo.
Yeah. And the idea is that if you think about it, it suddenly applies to every film you love.
Right, absolutely. I'm looking at Campbell's. Real briefly, just in case somebody who doesn't know who Joseph Campbell is.
Yes.
Joseph Campbell basically spent his life exploring myth and storytelling and why we tell these stories and how how they often follow a particular path, and there's usually reasons why stories follow that path. But I was going to say, looking at this, it really reminds me about Bruce Lee's statement about a punch. In the beginning, a punch is just a punch.
Yeah.
Right? And then in your training, a punch becomes much more than that. It's all these different things. You have to turn your body this way. You have to do this, do that. And then through training, it all becomes natural, and now it's just a punch again.
It's the same thing as a musician. A musician, at first, it's very awkward and whatever. Or as a writer, or as a bowler, at first it's rough, and you go through the 10,000 hours, 100,000.
Sure.
10,000 hours in the chair.
Yeah, and it's the idea of you have to put in the time to hone your craft and to be better, and in the end you
just pick up the guitar and you play,
or you pick up the paintbrush or whatever. People look at great artists, and
it becomes about technique.
They say, how do you do that?
Right.
That's amazing. How do you do that? And it's like, it's like the idea is like $50 for a painting. You're not paying $50 for the painting. You're paying $50 for the 10,000 hours that I've already put in. This is a return on investment.
I think that's a Picasso quote, actually. Like he scribbled something on a napkin, and because someone said, "Hey, can I get something from you?" He goes, "Yeah," and he did a quick drawing on a napkin. I think it's Picasso, and the guy's, "Oh, how much?" And he said $20,000. He said, "But you just," and he goes, "No, you're paying for the fact that I've spent my life doing this." But yeah, you gain proficiency at something, and then when it becomes body memory, it starts getting into technique, and then technique is the depthless area of quote unquote
I think it's
art.
that, and it's also the what the Chinese call the woo of it, the idea that you're doing. It's like driving. You don't think about driving, but in fact, people do all sorts of shit while they're driving, but
I know I have.
For example, have you ever been driving for a while and then suddenly realized like 10 minutes has passed and you were off in some train of thought?
Do you ever get the feeling on long drives that you can kind of just get up and get a cup of coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it's that kind of thing.
I can't.
And in some way it means people.
Wait, but how does this apply to what we're talking about?
I don't know.
Well, in that the hero's journey can apply to really almost anything, whether it's a story, whether it's an experience that you're going through in your life. I mean, talking about these things about learning skills, it hits all the marks. There's a supernatural act, which I think is oftentimes somebody saying to you, "Wow, you've got some talent." It's somebody giving you permission to go on this journey. Mm-hmm. And then there's you meet a mentor, you get somebody who helps you and teaches you, all that stuff. You wind up working for them, and you're doing.
That's the problem with emo music.
You have to say,
a mentor.
Yeah, there comes a point where you have to say, "Fuck you, I'm doing it my way now," and you go off on your own.
Yeah.
And it's so anyway.
Yeah, it's the life is the hero's journey rather than as the victim's tale or whatever else.
Right. I one of the and you were talking about you can look at almost any movie and kind of find at least elements of this. I think one of the ones that most clearly illustrates the hero's journey is Disney's Hercules movies. Not only because Hercules it follows that anyways, but they're actually specifically addressing this as they're going along. His satyr mentor is telling him, "Look, this isn't how the hero's journey goes. We got to do this and this and this," and they're actively trying to build a myth, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember Hercules, so I can't speak.
We're talking the animated Disney film, right?
Yeah.
The goofy redheaded Hercules. One
of the other unsung, really good films from that era of Disney, actually, kind of got lost in the wash a little bit. I know Tom and I Mulan. I mean, speaking of heroes, Tom and I are big fans of Disney's Mulan, and that's another zinger right into what's Campbell's chart called again?
The Monomyth.
Well, that's what the wheel is called.
Yeah,
sure.
Oh, okay, the Monomyth. Yeah, I mean, you can look it up online. Anybody listening,
there's
Joseph
Campbell. There are books about this stuff.
I didn't even hear about them till you guys, till Tom. You were like, "Yeah, read Monomyth," which I could only find notes about it. But I went into a YouTube spiral on Joseph Campbell videos. Yeah. He had this really good one that applies too. He said that myths need to exist because they're a mirror for our ego. They kind of tell us what to do. I mean, again, like we were saying, when we were fucking little kids.
Yeah.
They're Conan and Batman. It's as silly as it sounds, ticking around in you somewhere is, would my hero do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's an installation of morality, absolutely, especially for kids who grow up without the church.
Right.
It's you're getting your.
Well,
if we want to parable that, I mean, Superman. We all know what that's mirroring.
In the church, I mean, that's what you're constantly being fed are these morality tales and these
but aren't they? Yeah, they are, aren't they?
And they are. They're heroes' journeys. Mm-hmm. Whether you're talking about Moses, freeing the Israelites, or whatever. If you look at each of those stories, it pretty much follows this stuff, and it tells you, it gives you clear actions to take or clear consequences if you do the wrong thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's laid out in such simple terms. It's like, don't look back. I told you not to look back.
And to be clear, I'm an atheist, but I don't begrudge faith. But yeah, I jokingly said earlier, was Jesus Christ a superhero before we started the show? I mean, but I think Moses is a good example too.
Yeah. So, so it's only natural that a lot of the stories that we're talking about, the Gilgamesh, the Beowulf, and on, it's only natural that they come to the screen, right?
Sure.
Which luckily we're there, waiting. But what about when the hero is presented and is not? I don't use. I'll use the film as an example. Public Enemy.
Okay.
In many ways, the hero of that film is a really despicable guy who gets it in the end, and it's not. He doesn't ever return to whatever he ends up.
Sure. I've not seen it, but is he a hero in it?
Or it's It's the whole James Cagney, Edward G. Robinson ilk. It's all of that stuff.
You're following the
gangster, not the guy. Not you're following Nitty, not Elliot Ness.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there's a lot of that. I think especially after film came into being, where people were taking these stories, these heroes' journey stories, and say, what if we look at it from this guy's point of view?
Yeah.
Or from
the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead spin.
Right.
It's interesting that you bring up. I mean, that's the anti-hero, right?
Yeah.
I was allowed to see incredibly vicious films for my age. I've said it before. I saw The Exorcist when I was 5 in theaters. You know, I saw Superfly, and when I saw Superfly, I emulated the behavior the next day at home. I was about 4 years old. And
give me my bottle, bitch.
Dude, I took my lunch to school in a Mark of the Devil puke bag that I got at the theater.
Well,
not
there you go.
But when my mom
that
saw me
explains a lot, ladies and gentlemen.
But when my mom saw me emulating the behavior of Superfly, who's an anti-hero for all intents and purposes, she realized then that things like monsters and supernatural threats were okay because it was all clearly defined. But with the anti-hero, and that's why I didn't get to see Clockwork Orange till I was old enough to get my hands on it myself, because she saw Alex and was just like, I don't want my kid, because I emulated. But it's really a POV thing, though, isn't it? I mean, they're not heroes.
Yeah, I think the anti-hero appeals to a perverse part of us.
Well, I think it appeals to the American part of us.
Sure.
I mean, but what about when the anti-hero does good? I mean, Dirty Harry.
Is the guy an American Sniper in anti-hero?
Well,
that's something to ponder, actually.
That's a superhero with...
I think you're right. I think a lot of times the anti-hero is somebody who ultimately does good, but they do it in a not accepted way. So,
I mean, would you say like Zatoichi is a hero that is one that isn't malevolent, but he'll steal from you?
Sure.
He'll take advantage if he can, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's. I think that you're right. I think that appeals to a very American sentiment in that I'm going to do something. Don't tell me how I'm supposed to do it. I'm
a rogue cop.
Right, exactly. I sit on the corner of my desk.
Yeah,
I would argue that Batman's an anti-hero.
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at your Jimbo. That's 90 minutes of a guy fucking with someone, with a group of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and that myth can be twisted. Yeah, to be, for example, I'm looking at my list here and it says war heroes. It could be twisted into propaganda.
Oh, sure.
You know, Triumph of the Will wasn't exactly.
I think any movie with a war hero that's getting anywhere near flag waving is propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's actually more difficult to make a war film with heroic figures and have it not be propaganda.
Well, it comes in waves.
Bridge on the River Kwai doesn't come off as propaganda to me.
Right.
I think it largely depends on the environment and the atmosphere at the time.
The zeitgeist.
Yeah, I've often talked with people about like World War II. I think it would be really difficult for somebody to say we should not have gone to war. World War II.
I'm sure they were there.
I'm sure there was, but I mean, like overall, it's pretty.
I mean, America joined pretty late.
Pretty damn clear. Hitler is evil and he's gonna fuck shit up. We need to squash that.
Yeah, but anyway.
Well, and whereas compared to something like World War I, which was entirely silly, or Vietnam, where like
well, the thing about Vietnam was that it was the first televised war.
Sure.
So with
news
some of these things, like you start to see the war films of the 40s and the 50s, and you see them reflecting the war of the time. Right? It's the first time that creative people at the time of war were commenting on the war itself.
Right.
Both the good and the bad. In the 40s, you got things like The Best Years of Our Lives, and you got all the Audie Murphy films and And then later, like in the 60s, and with Korea going into Vietnam, you had a shift where now suddenly films that questioned the war became the norm.
Right.
It became the 70s, and where every film that had a uniform in it was usually...
I mean, hell, Coming Home and Deer Hunter came out in the same year, dude.
Exactly.
You know, and battled it out at the Oscars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Coming
Home, man. Yeah.
I mean, you even get into, and it lasted too, man, into like the late 70s, almost the 80s, because
there was a resurgence. There was a resurgence in the 80s with things like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket.
Remember that Richard Pryor movie with Margot Kidder, where he's the guy who returns from Vietnam who had been POW? I think it's called JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah,
that's great. Nice.
Now, and you know what? To bring it back, now that I think about it, that story completely applies to the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to massage.
You know what? I'll be honest. There's. I didn't think about it until just now, like literally just now, that even my book covers the same thing, the same sort of obstacles, and I wasn't even trying. Wow.
Oh, no flesh shall be spared.
Yeah. Speaking of the 70s,
Conan, man, Conan's all over that book, dude.
Yeah, Conan is all. There's a lot of that.
Conan Pliskin.
Yeah. But talking about films in the 70s that became anti-war, now you also had what I'm going to call hero over the man, where you had things like Superfly, like Friday Foster, and we had all the blaxploitation films.
Sure.
Which is another show.
Willie Dynamite, a pimp who's out to make money so he can get facial reconstruction surgery for his finest toe, Passion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Here are guys who are robbing a bank,
but
he's robbing a bank to get the money for his lover to get a sex change operation. I mean, it's like you
Now, here's the strange thing about Dog Day Afternoon for me, though. Now that you bring that film up, is I don't think Al Pacino's character is an anti-hero.
Really?
Yeah.
No,
I think he's Joseph Campbell. Man, I'm glad I watched those videos. He talked about something called the trickster hero, and that's what it reminds me of. I really wish I had a grasp on what it was, but it's the guy. How do I put it? What did he say? See the video. I'll post it.
I think it's basically the guy who has heroic sensibilities, but like an anti-hero, he's subverting the normal way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up back. Also, I'm remembering now. He ends up back where he started, which was in the shit house.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the wake that he left created good things.
Well, isn't that like remember the Trinity films?
Yeah,
where he would win, but in the end he would always end up losing his money or back where he was.
The Marcone fucking Leone films, Clint Eastwood.
Look at Django. Again and again and again and again.
Literally leaving a wake with the Gatling gun in the coffin.
Yeah.
Where was that in Tarantino's thing, man? It's like making a Star Wars film without lightsabers.
Yeah.
You have to have the Gatling gun in the coffin in the Django film.
Yeah.
I did a thing recently with a Gatling gun and a piano.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you get to shoot a piano with a Gatling gun?
I didn't see it. What's that?
Did you get to shoot a piano with a Gatling gun?
No. One of the characters in the thing that we filmed recently had a Gatling gun hiding in a piano, and at the right moment pulls it out and goes crazy and starts shooting.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Right on. You mentioned The Exorcist. When you did, I thought of myself as Father Karras' hero.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What about Mrs. McNeil? No, she's a helper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone there, he's the one that is the hero who is transformed, literally, and pays the ultimate price.
Yeah. He's the one who sacrifices.
Sacrifices, yes. The great sacrifice. I don't see... Oh, yeah, we do. I was going to say, I don't see the great sacrifice in his wheel, but there it is, atonement.
Atonement, yeah.
And Marin is like the...
He's the Campbell character.
He's the mentor.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth, absolutely. But you said it earlier, too.
What about someone like Doctor Strange? What do you think about that? Doctor Strange is supernatural hero. Man of action.
I'll say this: I can't wait to see the Doctor Strange movie. I have to go on Cosmic.
I'll just say this: I think the new Doctor Strange movie is going to be a CG light show, and by then
are.
I know.
I hope it has Van Halen music.
Van Halen music, the new Van Halen,
strike up some butt rock.
with geriatric. Don't get me started on the new Van Halen record. It's the new Van Halen record. This live record. It's so horrifically bad.
Okay, I haven't heard the live
David
record.
Lee Roth is that I'm 50 Molly Shannon character from SNL. He's literally this old person that can't kick high anymore and just screeches and yells at the audience while Eddie and the band just sort of chug away behind him.
I thought he sounded good when they first got back together, to be honest with you.
This whole new record is a train wreck.
We'll see. I'll listen to the new record. But I actually thought he held the band together when they first started coming around again, musically.
Well, he's a misunderstood hero then. Which leads us to misunderstood hero.
David Lee Roth.
Yeah. Which leads us to misunderstood heroes.
So that means Jim Dandy from Black Oak, Arkansas is also a misunderstood hero.
Agreed.
Zing!
But what about misunderstood heroes? The hero that does the thing that benefits everybody, but everyone still hates him. They're still...
They don't see it.
Martin Riggs, I guess, would apply.
Yeah, they don't see that the good that this person has done.
Mm-hmm.
You saved mankind, but you knocked down our city.
Yeah, but you're still a bum.
So fuck you, because now my building's a piece of shit.
Right. Everyone loves you until after they get the insurance assessment.
Well, that's a shitload of noir.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly, right? I didn't think about that, but yeah, absolutely.
Bucket load of noir.
Yeah. I mean, especially if noir is a lot of stuff. It's got the hero who's kind of an asshole, and who usually pokes his nose in the wrong place.
In those types of movies, if you have somebody that fits that fits the archetype, a real hero, that guy's going to get killed.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna sacrifice himself at some
depends.
point.
I think unless it's Japanese cinema, the hero always dies.
Yeah,
always dies.
Yeah,
they're operatic that way. They love that. No one lives happily ever after.
Sure.
Because we're in noir, the hero.
If they do, what's that?
As in noir, where the hero just does something stupid.
Yeah. Trust the wrong person.
His human foible. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust it.
Throws everything into whack. Out of whack.
It's usually a dame's fault.
Truth in cinema.
Do we have the accidental hero written down?
No, I don't. But that's a great one.
The Jack Burtons of our
Thank
time.
God you mentioned Jack Burton. I was so afraid no one was ever going to mention Jack Burton, and I didn't want to be the guy to do it.
That early clip, man, where Egg Chen is like, "You leave Jack Burton alone. He showed great courage." And Jack Burton just was there.
He's sort of. I'll use this word again. I've used it on other podcasts, but Jack Burton is a hero that literally glumps his way through stories. And I mean,
it's also fucking Han Solo.
Yeah, they're heroes despite themselves. It's the dropped gun that fires the shot that ricochets off of 15 things,
right,
and happens to hit the gun out of the guy's hand.
That was Don Knotts' hell.
Yeah.
Don Knotts. Yeah.
And I think those characters are really lovable because you can see yourself being a total screw up and hopefully causing some good to happen.
It's the underdog hero as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the dog with the ring.
What?
I was talking underdog.
Underdog.
Come on.
Oh, with the ring on its finger with the pill in it.
Yeah, with the pill. Yeah.
Sweet Polly Purebred was pretty hot.
Yeah. The other thing I have down here is biblical heroes, which we kind of already touched upon, but like Samson and Moses and all the like, and they're just, I think, more of the same, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's, they're presented in a story where they have to take... something about biblical heroes and biblical stories, though, is I think there's something a little different in that the hero is never fully allowed to be the hero, to reap the rewards of his heroic nature, because no matter what he does, there's still God over him. So he can't reach that pinnacle.
And if he gets to that pinnacle, if he does thwart the Pharaoh or whatever, and if he does take it and he doesn't give his glory to God, then he's an asshole.
He's punished. Yeah. He's not allowed to go into the land of milk and honey.
Almost sounds like Jason and the Argonauts.
Jason and the Argonauts too. Yeah, if he would have just said, "Fuck it," and made off with that fleece.
Yeah. The gods would have come down on him. Yeah. And that's and
what a cheat that is as a writer, to have that in your back pocket. Just know that at any point you can do that.
Yeah. Power of God.
I think that the Greek myths are probably the most famous and clear examples of this whole
Hercules. We talked
myth,
about
thing that Campbell talks about.
Let me ask you this, or were you getting at something, Langley?
I was just going to say that I'd have to guess that Campbell went and looked at the Odyssey as this kind of probably where he got the idea from, and then started branching it out. It's like, oh, it applies here, and it applies here, and it applies here. Because the Odyssey is literally like going around and hit all the points.
Do you think our modern superheroes are going to stack up to mythology in 100 years?
I think our modern superheroes aren't designed. Now's my point from earlier. I don't think they're designed to inspire. They're a commodity to be sold to an audience who is buying. And the kids grow up wearing their little Captain America suits, but when it comes time for them to sacrifice and put their iPhone down, you got a handful of trouble on your hands.
I think that it's a lot harder to...
That's my equivalent of standing on the porch and saying, "Fucking kids!" Go ahead.
They're also not static stories, are they? They go on. They're soaps.
They go on.
Go ahead, Langley.
They're soaps. But I was also going to say that I think it's probably really difficult today to inspire the way that stories did in the past because of the overabundance of outlets that we have.
How do you
internet?
How do you inspire a kid once he's seen the internet?
Right.
Once he's seen ass to mouth. Come on.
Well,
that changed me.
Look, if I'm living in a world where I tell a story and the only way for it to get around is for other people to say it or to carve it on some piece of stone, then when those stories come around, they're kind of rare things, right? And they become kind of iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, entertainment and stories and movies...
Yeah, all you have to say is fan fiction.
It's all disposable.
Yeah.
It's all disposable,
Yeah, that's the hard thing.
You reboot a series every freaking 5-10 years.
Yeah. And even then, a book as big as something like the Da Vinci Code was, it's still going to be a blip on the radar when in comparison to things like Tale of Two Cities or
Right. I don't think nothing that we do now will ever. I don't think people will ever look back at what we're making now with the same reverence as they have for what we consider the great classics.
Mm-hmm.
Not because they're not as good.
Go ahead.
But just because they're further along in the timeline, the story's been told before, and there's a million others like it.
Well, you see it in young audiences. I see them all the times at cons. I'm sure Sean does too. I know you run into them. Young people who you talk to them and they say, "Oh, I won't watch a movie before 1990. If it's made before 1990, I'm not going to watch it." It's like, well, why are we even having this discussion? Or anyone of any age that says, "Oh, I don't watch movies that are subtitled." It's like, whoa.
Just let me put this out there. Be smarter than that around me, because I will bitch slap you if you don't like Kodachrome fucking black and white.
Yeah, I think
Night of the Hunter, motherfucker.
It's
the movie by Charles
When it comes
Lawton.
to that stuff, I implore people, give it a try, because they're missing out on so much. And I think that they'd be blown away by a lot of the entertainment that they've cut themselves off from.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
if they just settled the fuck down,
yeah,
and put their fucking phone down.
Yeah.
I just watched a movie with a cool ass hero in it yesterday. Trapeze, man. I think Burt
Did you really?
Character. Yeah, they had it on Turner Classic Movies,
dude. When
without commercial interruption.
When Tony Curtis falls,
yeah,
that's crazy. Spoiler.
Yeah, but but he opens the film destitute. He's washed up.
Yeah.
He gets Tony Curtis to where he needs to be, and he selflessly steps back.
How much of a stud was Burt Lancaster, by the way?
Right.
Yeah. You ever see that? Gilbert Gottfried was just talking about this movie on his mini podcast, which I highly recommend. But Burt Lancaster was in a movie called The Swimmer.
Fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a stud in that movie. It's fucking awesome. If you haven't seen it, it's about a guy who has to get from point A to point B in L.A., and he realizes that he can swim through people's backyards. Pools. Yeah, he goes from pool to pool to pool, and along the way he meets people he knows. And
anybody who's flown into L.A. realizes that it's actually possible, because you look down and half of it is blue, and you realize it's swimming pools.
Anyway, the Swimmer, if you can find it, it's one of those weird...
It's bizarre, man.
Is Elmer Gantry a hero?
Wow. I'm going to pass.
And then the Swimmer sucks you into its universe, and it becomes normal somehow, too, while you're watching it. You stop tripping out that he's just swimming across people's swimming pools.
But back to Langley just asked, is Elmer Gantry a hero? He's kind of an anti-hero, right?
Right.
He at best he serves as an example.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's a con man.
But what happens when your villain is so cool? I mean, look at Robert Mitchum in Night of the Hunter.
Yeah.
Or look at, it can be said that a hero is only as good as his villain.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Batman is only Batman because of the Joker.
Right.
Who's the hero in Night of the Hunter, would you say? The kids?
What's that?
Who's the hero in Night of the Hunter, would you say? The kids? Or would you say it's
I think it's
the woman who runs the home for
probably.
kids?
Yeah, probably.
I think it's the woman. Yeah.
See Night of the Hunter, by the way, if you haven't. Anybody listening? Charles Lawton's only film as a director.
Yeah.
No, he did a.
What did he direct?
Didn't he do Island of Lost Souls?
No. He did one.
What was the film he did that's never been released?
And it flopped.
Yeah. What was the film?
They wouldn't let him do another.
What was the film he did that was never released?
I didn't know there was one.
God damn it! Keep talking.
Island of Lost Souls, though, starring Charles Lawton, is amazing. And Langley, you're an effects guy. What really blew me away when I saw it, because it was really rare when I was a little kid growing up on Universal horror films. They never showed that. And when Criterion released it, I saw it for the first time, and the effects blew me away.
The makeup was great.
At how fresh it still looks.
Yeah.
And Boris Lugosi's best role, really,
Bella.
In a genre movie.
Hey, that was great, Boris Lugosi. That was awesome.
Did I say Boris Lugosi?
Yeah.
Shit! I just outed myself.
That was awesome. Someone's been drinking.
No, that's who I write. That's the horror review guy at our blog spot.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's why you said it.
Whoops.
Bela Lugosi. Of course I know.
It's a great movie, and the makeup in it is phenomenal for its time.
I'm sorry. What movie are we talking about?
Island of Lost Souls.
Oh yeah. Great movie.
And I think largely because it was requiring people to go so far out of the box. At that, up to that point, you make a monster, and they're usually either covered in hair or they're an emaciated corpse of some type, whether it's Frankenstein or Dracula or the Mummy.
But even then, when Frankenstein was first revealed, people went nuts.
Yeah, they freaked the fuck out. Yeah.
The other thing about Island of Lost Souls is, as much as I love James Whale's Frankenstein, there's a reason Gene Wilder was able to lampoon "It's alive" so well in Young Frankenstein.
Sure.
Island of Lost Souls is completely serious.
Yeah.
And its grimness and its nihilism, again, it comes off. It's like M. It's like Fritz Lang's M almost.
Yeah.
It's like it could have been made yesterday.
Yeah.
Like this could be Guy Madden like doing a genre film or something.
Well, talking about Charles Laughton hand makeup, that takes us to the 1940s version of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, where
so is Quasimodo a hero?
That's what. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting to. What is Quasimodo? Where does he fall in the spectrum?
Sure, I think he's a hero that in that he overcomes.
Sure.
He may die, but he overcomes.
Well, he doesn't die.
Doesn't he die?
No.
At the end, doesn't he fall?
No, he's like Trinity. He winds up in the same sad circumstance that he was. He fights.
I'm sorry.
For this,
you said Trinity. I thought in the Matrix.
He fights for the
girl,
woman, right? And she goes, and she gets freed and everything, and he's done the great thing, and she goes off with
the prince,
the handsome, guy,
that away,
right? And he's sitting there at the very end.
So it's realistic.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's sitting there at the end with his arm around the gargoyle, saying, "I wish I was stoned like you," because then he wouldn't feel the pain, the heartache that he feels.
Yeah.
How sad is that? Holy shit, man! That's a great movie.
Well, to that I say, what a bitch.
Yeah,
that's what you get.
Those stories, I think, are way more.
Don't go for 9s. That's the message there. Don't go for 9s or 10s. You go for a nice solid 6 or 7. Yeah? And one that can cook.
Stay in the race.
That's what I'm saying.
Stay in the race.
That's what I'm saying.
So often in cinema,
shoot us when she comes back.
In the century plus old history of cinema, so often the hero is male.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But we've got some notable exceptions, don't we?
We do.
Red Sonja, baby.
Red Sonja, who isn't, in the mythos isn't.
Wait a minute, isn't that notable? I'm talking about the movie.
I know, not the movie. But in literature, what's interesting is when everyone thinks Red Sonja, they think, oh, Conan's girlfriend, right? Or whatever. Maybe they don't. That's a little diminutive, but anyway. So, but they think that. But in the stories, she's in a few stories, but mostly the love of his life was the sea pirate.
Right. Yeah.
So there.
That was a good comic arc on Dark Horse, by the way.
Yeah.
It was, actually.
I'm thinking specifically of the character of Ripley.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ripley, Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
All of that.
Electra Woman.
What's that?
Electra Woman.
And Dinah Girl. Absolutely.
By the way, everybody's seen they're making a new Electra Woman and Dinah Girl.
Oh, stop.
Why?
Yeah. It's just my youth. Bent over like Carl.
Oh, they're also making a new Sigmund and the Sea Monsters.
Are they really?
Yeah, they are.
I was waiting. What?
I was going to say, I've always wanted a serious, like somewhere between that and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Sure.
Joe Dante's Sigmund and the Sea Monsters.
I have a thing on my to-do list that has something obliquely to do with Sid Marty Krofft.
Cool.
That I don't want to talk about. So
I know exactly
about it.
What you're talking about, and it's great.
Yeah. So anyway,
but sorry. This is kind of off topic for a second, but and I forgot. So go ahead.
Nice. And this episode is brought to you by alcohol, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. I'm drinking these Red's green apple beers, and they're pretty good.
Nice. So yeah,
On to Stella Artois now.
female action heroes. The problem is that inherently it was always harder to have them be bigger than life physically. Other than like maybe Wonder Woman,
Well,
you didn't get a lot of, women whipping ass until you got to like,
the Asian
Black
martial
Swords.
arts.
Yes,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely changed in comic books. I mean, when I take stock of my favorite comics now,
Mm-hmm.
most of them feature female protagonists, and I think it's about to really drastically change once the Marvel cycle gets to the female characters.
It's become a trope, hasn't it? The badass girl kicking ass.
right. It's Hit Girl.
Right. And
The one,
what I think would be more interesting, and what I think is interesting in when we see things like Norma Ray, for example, Erin Brockovich. These are not action heroes. These are women who are...
they're the everyday heroes we talked about.
Exactly. Standing up
Before
against...
we go too far astray from female action heroes and like female superheroes, can we just talk for a second about the way women are portrayed in comics? How you have these for example, we'll use Elektra, this great fighter with these gigantic breasts and these little tiny waists. You know what I mean? It's this very sort of sexualized way of the presentation of the female form. It's all the fuss that was over Milo Manara's Spider-Woman.
Right.
Well,
I think that's present all through comics. I mean, like the dudes are just as exaggerated,
and if they're fat, they're either like a mutant, and they're like the Thing, or they're a villain.
Yeah,
they're the blob.
Right.
And I totally know what you mean, Tom. And I think it's going to be easier to work in different body types in the film universes. But just certain lines look better drawn.
It pinches them sometimes, because how many times have you heard, like when the Elektra film was made with Jennifer Gardner?
Yeah.
People were like, "Yeah, it was cool, but she didn't really look like it physically."
Right.
Or worse, they start buying into bullshit like Cameron Diaz can kick 3 or 4 guys' ass at a time.
Yeah.
Where you start thinking like, "Oh, any girl can."
Well, but we're talking about action heroes and superheroes where 90% of the stuff presented, whether it's male or female, is impossible.
Well,
anyway.
yeah, okay. Okay.
So it doesn't...
Go and pull that card.
I mean, could this guy do that too? Probably
right,
not.
I know. I'm saying physically...
No, I agree. You can't shoot 83 soldiers,
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why it's a movie.
Right.
Right? So that we can escape from... it's escapism.
If it was life, it would just be
it'd be
a guy.
really boring.
Yeah.
And, Tom and I, we're both similar also in the fact that we both have daughters.
Yes.
And
yes,
as the father of a daughter...
Of superheroes.
Yeah.
All right.
We're the superheroes. They're sidekicks.
No, I was calling my daughter a superhero, which she is. Yeah, that's about this, huh? Tom with some sentimentality.
I was like, you're not supposed to tell people that in public, dude. You don't
Tom with a
tell
little
people.
sentimentality, and this whole thing comes to a stop.
You just outed her. Now all the supervillains are going to be after her, dude.
I
Good
think
work,
I think
Dad.
the sad thing is that, and this is for...
Well, hold on. Just to complete my thought, I think scenes with Cameron Diaz kicking 4 guys' asses is still a good
female
like
empowerment.
We're saying, we learn from our superheroes.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to take it. You can
Right.
Sure.
Deck a motherfucker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Motherfucker. And Tom, that your daughter and my daughter are both the types to do that.
Yeah. But at some point, a woman at 5'2" and 100 pounds isn't going to deck anybody.
Well, I think it's in the context of the film. If it's
I know that, and I get that,
I don't know.
Jessica Tandy jumps up in
4'11". I've seen that plenty of people.
Yeah.
Cocoon Foo.
What I was going to say, I think the sad thing is that media in general, because and again, this is a completely different show, but because it keeps portraying these stereotypes, you'll find girls who want to be like the video vixen or the.
Isn't that what cosplay is?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's really sad.
And in its extreme, you got that crazy. In its extreme, you got like that crazy bitch that in Russia that's carving herself up to look like Barbie.
Right.
Have you seen this?
Yeah. It's very.
I think the interesting thing about cosplay and this oncoming female dynamic in superheroes that's getting bigger and bigger. It's going to be interesting because I see a lot of. It's okay for a girl to cosplay a male character.
Mm-hmm.
Their sexuality's not challenged. It's like, oh, well, she's into, the Flash or whatever, or Arrow, and she wants to be.
There's a lot of that. There's the female Lokis.
When the female superheroes really take over and they have their day, and trust me, it's coming. There's going to be a 5 or 6 year period where it's all about Ms. Marvel and I think that's going to be really cool because these stories are well written. That's begetting this stuff that's coming. But is it going to be okay for a little boy to cosplay Ms. Marvel?
Well, as far as female superhero goes, we'll see all of that if that works with the Wonder Woman film. If the Wonder Woman film works, it's green light all the way to payday. But if that Wonder Woman film tanks, forget it.
Lexi Alexander, the woman who directed the brilliant Punisher Warzone, which we've talked about on this show, turned down doing Wonder Woman because it's damn near a setup.
Dude, I would love to see that. Lexi Alexander's.
Oh, I know, but her rationale was really good, and not to quote her out of turn, but I mean it's all over the internet. She basically said that they're going to get a woman director, and if that woman director fails, then it's going to be a reason to not hire women directors. That it's such a crazy political hot seat.
In a male-dominated industry, a woman fan.
I think for her it's probably a little worse because of her stand on downloading and stuff like that too. She's really riled with others, but
in a male-dominated industry, a woman fails harder than a man failing.
Yeah.
Which sucks a bag of dicks.
I mean, well, you just said it. If the Wonder Woman film is a success, then
I don't care how touted and how famous and how successful Catherine Bigelow is. Give her 2 or 3 dog films, and she's done.
Yeah.
Whereas another director who is maybe equally or lesser talented will continue, despite bad film after bad film after bad film. Because
Rodriguez.
You could become a Uwe Boll or a Uli Lamel, easily.
It's only up to go. I want to go back to your Wonder Woman comment real quick, though. If it does flop, I don't think that is the big nail in the coffin. I think, especially with Guardians of the Universe, we've now seen that the Marvel
Guardians of the
Universe can pull something out of left field in their
That's the thing that I think is the only thing that's going to hit now is the oblique shot. Yeah, it's the oblique shot. It's not the thing that everyone expects to happen. What you're going to see more and more of is Guardians of the Galaxy. Some film that comes out of nowhere that no one's ever heard of, that has a completely unique vision, and it'll explode. Meanwhile, Hollywood will be still chugging out the one lame, same story or same guy, different suit story after another, as opposed to trying to do something original.
Am I an asshole for hoping that this whole superhero infatuation bullshit goes away as quickly as possible.
I don't think it needs to quite go
I like
away.
it.
I think it needs to elevate itself to stop just chugging out, what everyone expects. And, ooh, are they going to do this? Ooh, are they going to do that? It's the same thing I talked about in the Walking Dead episode. When you do a character or a franchise and you start adhering to storylines, you're bound by the storylines. And then it was like, dude, the movie was just like it was exactly like the book. People expect something different, so why not just do a completely different story, other than the inherent risk when it.
That's part of the reason they blow up the universe about every 5 years now.
Right.
But the irony is they don't change anything. You know what I mean?
They fall into different traps because they're insincere.
Yeah. Well put. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's going to be the oblique shot. Although I think Guardians of the Galaxy was a good shot across the bow, and I think it woke a lot of people up.
I think Guardians of the Galaxy was most definitely a corporate shot, oblique shot.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you don't make that film on a dime.
No, hell no.
But it was one of those films where I didn't expect it to do the business it did.
Good judgment.
Even though I like James Gunn.
Yeah.
Shout out to James Gunn.
Seems like they let him do his thing too.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're letting him do his thing with the second
part 2. Yeah.
That's the big. I think
I'm a
that's the
huge
big
James
secret.
Gunn fanatic, by the way. We know that. Slither. It's one of my favorite movies. Anyway, sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's the secret that they keep, that they fail to grasp, is that when you give the creative people the control, you're going to wind up with a better product.
Mm-hmm.
And they continually get in the way. They say, no, we can't do that, or this doesn't look enough like this,
mm-hmm.
or Steve Wang was talking about this at Monsterpalooza. It's like, it's not that iconic monster design isn't being made. It is all the time. It's that the studio guy comes in there and he goes, oh, I like the head on that, and the leg on that, and the arm on that. Right. And then they make you throw it all together, and it's a horrible design. They're doing the same thing with stories.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there's a difference in in filmmaking. You go on movie sets, and it's not like everyone involved is committed to the director's vision or the story or making a good film. They want to make a good film, but you know what? Instead, they're there because it's Monday or it's Tuesday, mm-hmm. and that's their job to be there. And they're setting up. They're a grip, or they're a best boy, or they're a gaffer, and they're moving stuff around, and they could give a shit what's going on. And there's a big difference where that part of that sort of corporate area butts up against the 10 guys that are making a film in their garage, or there are a lot of the filmmaking that's happening where we live in Bellingham. It's a lot of this organic filmmaking where everyone from the director to the wife of the director who's serving his craft services, everyone cares about the film and is making the film. They're hampered by budget, so it's harder to get their point across and harder to deliver the message.
We could massage the making of a film into the Monomyth.
That's true, man. It's true. I
was going to be a smart ass, and right after you were done describing the asshole, I was going to say, is he a superhero?
But don't get me wrong. It's totally understandable why these guys that work there don't care about the director's vision. I'm not faulting them at one bit. They have a job to do, but when you sign on to do they say the bigger the budget, the bigger the problems, and in that case, it's one of the problems is that the people working on it aren't all philosophically going in the same direction.
They're not invested.
You know what the bigger problem is? Are the audiences.
What's that?
The bigger problem are the audiences.
Could be.
Because there are a lot of good movies always rolling out. I mean, I'm not a fan of It Follows, but as far as an independent film, I have to begrudgingly recommend it because I probably know you're going to like it. Just like The Conjuring, I'm not a fan of, but you might want to check it out because it's for some reason it's connecting with a lot of people. Go ahead, Tom.
No, what were you saying?
I was going to say I totally blame those guys, the guys that you don't blame that are there just doing their job, because if you're going to get involved in the film industry, God damn it, you better like films.
You should, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like he doesn't really care if the hero gets the girl.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what all they care about is how many seats is this going to fill.
Right.
Even more importantly, how many bags of popcorn is this going to sell?
Yeah.
Fucking bullshit. If you're involved in what I think is the greatest artistic expression that anybody can do, in my opinion, is film, because it involves every other. It involves music, it involves sculpture, it involves painting, it involves writing, it involves acting. Everything goes into a film. If you're going to be involved in that, you better care. Movies better be important to you, and not because they're going to pay for your car.
No, I get that, but at the end of the day, as someone who earns his money, let's say as a gaffer, he's showing up to a job. He has an agency who gives him his job,
Sure.
and he shows up. At the time he shows up, probably the first question he asks is, so what are we doing? At that point, he's not someone who's sort of knows the plot, and
Right. Right.
he's there just to do his gig.
He's doing his job, right.
So
No, I'm not talking about those guys. Those
Right.
guys are craftsmen.
yeah.
Okay? I'm talking about executives, studio executives.
Oh well,
Yeah.
no, they don't.
Yeah, the guy
That's
sitting
my-
at the board meeting. Yeah,
Yeah, they don't care at all. They
that
give a
changed a
shit.
long time ago.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
It's been that way for a long time.
Well, it's been that way since its inception. Can you hand me that right there? That white thing right there?
This thing?
Yeah. I'm reading a book right now by Ron Bass called "If the Other Guy Isn't Jack Nicholson, I've Got the Part," and it sort of takes you through the film industry and tells you about why certain people were initially going to be cast in something and the decision making that went into, how Vivian Leigh got the part in Gone with the Wind, that kind of thing.
Right.
Those kind of stories. But what it shows me overall is that the heads of studio, the people who decide what gets made, they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, and you know where that started? Fucking Jack Warner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The whole old studio system, it was designed not to reward anybody except the studio.
Right.
Yeah.
But prior to Jack Warner, Warner Brothers was run by somebody who was philosophically invested. Now, I'm not making the argument that a filmmaker.
There was still the director is God era though back then. It's like they were concerned about numbers.
No, during the studio system, it was the studio was God. Because if they didn't like what was going on, they were known to just walk up to a director and go, "You don't need to show up on Monday. This guy's going to do the rest of the movie."
Prior to Jack getting in charge, his brother basically said, "We have mandates as a studio. We have to educate."
Mm-hmm.
We have to entertain. That he felt that they had a moral responsibility. I think that's dangerous. I don't think that we should go, but I do think that we have a responsibility to the art.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
And a multitude of arts.
Yeah. And so, getting back to heroes, the real life hero, I think, in today's filmmaking world, is that independent guy. The guy who's like, I don't know any other way to tell my story
Hopefully.
other than to do a Kickstarter campaign and get enough money to make
his intention is pure.
Yes, exactly.
Is he a superhero?
Is he?
He's a hero.
I think that goes back to the everyone's life can be a hero. I think there are hero young filmmakers and old filmmakers, and there's also shitheads out there that are just trying to make money. And
there are villains out there in the filmmaking world.
Absolutely. I will go back to saying that something you said about how filmmaking is the greatest art. As someone who makes my living hopefully off of prose, I got to tell you to go cram that one up your ass. But anyway, but yeah, the studio system, man, geez, and it changed because the industry changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And as it changed, we saw a change in how heroes were portrayed and kind of the main characters and became anti-heroes. So like as the studio system started to collapse in the 60s, and we started to see the rise of the independent, of the guys, the film school guys, the Scorseses and those guys.
Yeah.
We saw the rise of the anti-hero. We saw the rise of Travis Bickle.
Well, what happened, I think, is that the actors, with the fall of the studio system, the actors weren't being told, this is your next picture.
Right.
They had to start choosing, and in a lot of cases, they chose wrong, and their careers went to dust.
Right.
But suddenly, an actor had an influence on what was going on
Sure.
screen, and you started to hear more and more actor-directors. You would never hear actor-director under the studio system, ever.
Where does Charlton Heston's character in the Planet of the Apes fall? Is he a hero? I say no.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's a human hero. To the apes, he's a terrorist.
I think the real hero of that movie is.
It's fucking yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Running
she's
it's
the I don't remember
Zira.
her. Yeah, Zira. Yes. Yeah. She's the hero. She's the one that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think he's the catalyst.
And then as the franchise goes on, that's shared with Cornelius.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
In the first one, he's too. He's
Mousy
too
and wishy-washy.
Yeah, he's afraid.
And don't even get me started on the whole. Well, someday we're going to do a Planet of the Apes episode, hopefully with a special guest.
Yeah.
And the whole Jesus Christ motif in the Planet of the Apes thing we'll get into.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm empty.
Kind of such a superhero shit.
I think it's about time for us to come up with.
What's that?
What it takes to be a hero.
I think it's about time to come up with our own personal favorite heroes in a movie, characters. Who is our favorite?
Wow.
Or maybe top 2 or 3, because that's kind of like
that makes it hard. You got make.
Okay.
You have to keep it to one, otherwise we'll go on forever.
Yeah.
I am not going to go first.
Yeah.
No. Anybody?
Fuck, I don't know, man.
Well,
that's a tough one, dude.
Okay, let's say this. Not your favorite or not the top one, just one you think is great and everybody should definitely check out.
I'll give you a couple that are, I'll call them influential to my moral fiber.
Okay.
Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon.
Right.
Of course.
Who essentially plays himself, except that he's not a spy in real life.
Essentially James Bond.
Right.
I hope I didn't steal that from one
No,
from
not
your
at all.
list.
Not at all.
Batman, which we've never done a Batman show, have we?
No.
Nope.
We kind of did. We talked a little bit about it, but anyway,
I don't remember our early episodes.
I don't either. Another reason this episode is brought to you by alcohol. So I think those two. I think for me, Miyamoto Musashi is really important.
Sure.
And Ron Jeremy, just because.
Okay.
Wait,
I got my
character.
Carol Jo
care.
Hummer.
What's that?
J. Michael Vincent is Carol Jo Hummer in White Line Fever.
Wow.
Mr. Majestic, Charles Bronson.
Look at this.
And Godzilla.
And Godzilla.
I have to go with R.J. McCready.
Is a thing?
Yeah.
I almost picked him. Well,
here's a guy that in the beginning
if you're going to put thought into it.
Here's a guy that in the beginning is kind of nihilistic, doesn't really give a fuck. He's kind of just there doing his job. He's that gaffer that
Yeah.
you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, he's given up. He's given up
fucks
his life.
everybody.
He's given up his life to make sure
Yeah.
that the rest of humanity is okay.
Right. But so isn't he an accidental hero? Because he just happened to be there when this thing came into camp.
Absolutely. But he also...
No, but it's part of his fiber. I don't think he is an accidental hero.
Yeah.
I mean, he is kind of just there, but he could have just stayed in that same mindset that he stayed in.
Sure.
Instead of kind of... He winds up taking the lead. He kind of tells everybody, this is what we're going to fucking do. You know?
Yeah. Well, when something starts eating your friend's hands, that's not...
He didn't have any...
Okay, so is that it?
Oh, I would also say...
Dead air. That's what's known as dead air.
Dead air.
While you think of that, I'm going to throw out Wang Fei Hung
Sure.
in Chinese cinema.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
Who's that?
He was like he's been played by dozens and dozens of. I want to say Once Upon a Time in China was a Wang Fei Hung film.
He was a huge catalyst for change in Chinese history, and for the Chinese people to kind of stand up for
superhero.
themselves.
Yeah, like a folk superhero. Yeah, and
Right.
if you go back, if you pay attention in a lot of Chinese films, one of the characters will be Wang Fei Hung. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm still thinking. I also got to.
He wants to say Bruce Lee.
I do. I do. Well, I mean, there's the real Bruce Lee, who's a real life hero, and then there's the Lee of the. Okay, well then I'm going to say the Lee character in Way of the Dragon.
The splitting of hairs.
Yes. In Way of the Dragon, he
was it Wang Chi? No. No, that's Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah. No.
Ooh.
But yeah, anyway,
I'm cringy because I want to say Jack Burton too. But
yeah, well, Jack Burton we talked about. Yeah, but he's.
Do you know
the everyman hero?
Yeah. Do you know that Kurt Russell said they asked him where he got the character for Jack Burton? He said that he crossed John Wayne and Jerry Lewis.
And Jerry
perfect.
Lewis.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
John Wayne and Jerry Lewis. Anyway, okay. Well,
Came out as Clint Eastwood.
What's that?
It came out as Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, I think it's more. He's more inept.
Although it's fucking John Wayne.
We should do a show once where we take a film and go into it, and we will.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're about at 90 minutes.
Wait. There's two names that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
And we have to.
Okay.
Because they contrast, and they're both from a genre that is built around heroes.
Okay.
And that is the Western.
Yes.
So on one hand, we've got John Wayne and the John Wayne character.
Yes.
And then we have Clint Eastwood and the characters that he played.
Yes.
Are these characters both heroes? Is one an anti-hero?
I think, one's an anti-hero.
Mm-hmm.
And one is just your classic,
hero.
Although, in the Searchers, he was kind of an asshole.
Yeah, in the Searchers, he was...
But he was never an out-and-out asshole.
No, but he was...
He was a lovable asshole.
He was harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas usually his character isn't vindictive or, vengeful as much as, I'm just doing the right thing.
But a lot of times, that was one of those things where it was just John Wayne the man dropped into a scene.
Right. Like the Green Berets.
Yeah. That was just John Wayne just hanging out on
John
set.
Wayne.
Yeah.
All right, we're at an hour and a half.
Yeah, so that's 90 minutes.
So
wow.
Real briefly before we go, I think we should mention that we we've expanded our formats, our availability.
Yes.
As far as the show.
The show's now available on iTunes and Stitcher. So spread the word, please, if you can.
Yeah. It'll still be uploaded on YouTube.
Yes.
But things like iTunes gives you an opportunity to subscribe and
so do they just search the bonus material?
Yeah.
On both those platforms?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
And please rate and review on all formats. That would really help. We want to also say that Heather has been gone. She's off doing a crazy long road trip. We're calling it
her the Heather Buckley World Tour.
Right.
Yeah.
But she's hit. I mean, this is convention season, and she's hitting them all, or as many as she can. So hopefully, when she comes back, she's going to have wonderful tales to tell us.
Yes.
Especially if we do an episode on conventions and convention.
Yes,
culture.
that one's coming.
Yeah.
We have a special guest for that.
And Langley's got an epic blog coming on our blog spot too about his time at Monsterpalooza.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
check that out.
It'll be quite long. Also, for listeners, if you have an idea, what is something you want to hear us talk about?
Yes.
We have several. We've lined them up ahead of time, but being the same people that we are from week to week, we kind of
forget.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there's something you want to hear us talk about that you don't think we've touched on or haven't touched enough, please let us know.
Yeah, go to the blog.
If there's a spot we haven't touched enough,
yes.
Let us know.
So go to the blog, which is, Sean, where's that?
The blog spot?
Yeah.
The bonus material podcast blog spot.
Okay.
You search bonus material podcast blog spot and it'll pop up.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Do that. We have a Facebook page. Go there, and you can request access to a secret forum where we mostly talk in. There's that. And finally, I want to say before we head out of here to please buy my book, No Flesh Shall Be Spared, on Amazon.com. Carbon Noctum 20 is coming in. It should be here soon, within a week. I know it's at the printers, and I know that I've already seen all the proofs of it, and it looks beautiful. So go to Carbon Noctum 20.
Very excited about that.
And if you like heavy metal, go buy my old album by
these are the
Party with God by Sacrilege BC. If you like that old Bay Area thrash stuff, at NovemberFire.com. Shout out to Strepp and Taylor too.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah. I have nothing to plug.
Okay, good. So, and also, one thing I want to throw out there, that look for the bonus material to be coming to some cons in the area. Mm-hmm. In the Pacific Northwest, western side of the country. Okay, that's it. This is the Bonus Material Podcast. I'm Tom Carnell.
I'm Sean Smithson.
And I'm Langley West.
We'll see you.